Good morning.
Are we all good? Everything set?
I'm just struggling with the stream. YouTube's giving me 3 different options. Which stream should I go for?
Ammonia, you there? How are you? Nice to see you again. Yeah, Anna's having some issues with the stream for YouTube.
I got an email. I got an email for the stream. Should I go for? Yes, I have just received an email saying Ocean Governance Marine Mammal Twinning live stream. Should I? Yeah, no, it's good. So now I just click on it and it will go live. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, I will try that now. No, this is not the wrong thing. Yeah, I think it's all good. Yes. I will share.
Yeah, I can see it on my side too.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to this webinar titled Towards Effectively Managing Marine Mammals in the Western Indian Ocean, the Marine Mammals Management Toolkit. The webinar was I will run through the webinar agenda quite quickly, and then I will address some housekeeping remarks as well. So we will start by having 3 introductory presentations on our co-hosts, which are the Western Indian Ocean Marine Science Association, the Western Indian Ocean Marine Protected Area Network, and the Ocean Governance Project. We will then hear a presentation on the importance of marine mammals in the Western Indian Ocean. We'll then dive into the nitty-gritty of the Marine Mammals Management Toolkit and the self-assessment tool, and we'll hear a case study of the application of the self-assessment tool in the Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary. We'll then have ample time for some question and answers, and we'll conclude the webinar. So some housekeeping remarks before I start with the presentation. There's simultaneous English-French interpreting provided during the webinar, and you can choose which language you'd like to hear it from on the bottom right corner of your Zoom window. I ask the speakers to speak slowly to ease the interpretation. And also for the question and answer session, the chat will be open and monitored throughout the webinar. And the questions can be posted in the chat, or during the question and answer session, you can raise your hand and ask the question directly to our speakers. And finally, please note that the meeting will be recorded and live streamed on the Marine Mammal Twinning YouTube channel. So we're here now for the first presentation from Dr. Arthur Tuda on the Western Indian Ocean Marine Science Association. So Arthur, the floor is yours. Do we have Arthur online? Okay, we can skip ahead with the presentation. We can come back to Arthur Tuda. So we'll hear now from Dr. Karine Potin from the Western Indian Ocean Marine Protected Area Network, and she's also the director of the La Réunion National Marine Reserve. Okay, I think there might be some technical difficulties on their end, but I know the next speaker is, just checked, the next speaker is online. So I'll give the floor to Puri Canals, who will give an introduction of the Ocean Governance Project. So Puri Canals, please, the floor is yours.
Anna, really sorry to jump in, and Puri, apologies to jump in. I think there are some technical issues with some of the speakers joining, but I do see that Arthur has managed to join. So I suggest, Anna, if we revert back to Arthur for the introduction, and then hopefully Kareem may have joined by then and we can resume the agenda, but it looks like Arthur's been able to join. So
okay, perfect. Thank you for that. And sorry, apologies for these technical difficulties. So, Arthur, have you been able to join?
Yeah, think I've been able to join, if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you all good. So thank you so much for joining, and the floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Anna, and apologies for that delay in joining. As Anna said, my name is Arthur Tudor, and I'm from the Western Indian Ocean Marine Science Association, WIOMSA. First, I would like to thank the organizers of this webinar. That's very important for us as WIOMSA and also the Western Indian Ocean region, given that our region is a hot spot for marine mammals. We've documented the presence of different marine mammals here, and I think one of the things that we were lacking as a region was to put in place mechanisms on how we can work together to monitor movements of these important animals across our region. Many countries in the region have already put in place measures and legislations to protect marine mammals, actually nearly all the Western Indian Ocean countries. And these include the Convention on Migratory Species, CITES, and UNCLOS, which are very important for the protection of marine mammals. But we also have some challenges, of course, including weak national legislations and less priority that has been given to marine mammals when it comes to, conservation issues. So I think coming together here as practitioners in the Western Indian Ocean region, particularly WIOMPAN, who are responsible for management of marine protected areas, I think this is a very important opportunity for us to explore the use of this tool and see how we can work together to monitor marine mammals in all our 144 protected areas in the Western Indian Ocean region. So I'm happy to welcome you all, and I hope that we're going to have a very interesting session that will help us to take the next steps forward in the conservation of marine mammals in the Western Indian Ocean region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Arthur, for giving this great introduction. I will now give the floor to Puri Canals from the Ocean Governance Technical Director and Networks Twinning Coordinator, and she will give an introduction on the Ocean Governance Project. So, Puri, thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to just share my presentation. It doesn't allow me to share. It says that I cannot share my screen.
Puri, we have the presentation.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You can just share the screen now.
Okay. Okay. Okay, can you see it well?
Yes.
Yeah. Perfect. So yes, first of all, good morning or good afternoon, depending on which part of the world you are. And yeah, it's glad to be here supporting the activity of the marine mammals twinning. And I'm going to do a very quick presentation about the overall ocean governance so you can understand better what is the context in which this marine mammal tool has been developed and the value that it has, that it goes beyond the specific activity for marine mammals. So the EU Ocean Governance is a project that wants to promote especially this role of the European Union as an actor in international ocean governance, but by doing this through the marine protected areas management. This is the main target of of the project, and it has two main regions for action, the Atlantic and Southeast Asia region. But as you can see, we are going beyond. We are today working with the Indian Ocean, and we are also active in the Pacific. The project had a duration of 4 years and will end December of this year. So this, I will not talk here. It's led by a consortium, led by GOPA, with WWF Indonesia and BNS. I will not explain those details. And what is more relevant is that the project has 4 main components. First component, targeting Southeast Asia, which is to promote restoration of marine and coastal ecosystems. For this, I want to tell later exactly what we are doing. The second component is about exchanges for management across the Atlantic, and is in this component in which the marine mammals tool and the marine mammal partnership is a key element. Then we have a third component, which are exchanges between the Atlantic and Southeast Asia, and a fourth component that is to improve the dialogue, that means transboundary cooperation in the region of Southeast Asia. So those are the 4 main components. But we have already a background that goes beyond the timing of our ocean governance. The ocean governance, the second component in the Atlantic, comes from a previous project that was called Transatlantic Marine Protected Areas Network, and it started in 2016 and ended in 2019. And the main focus here was to promote exchanges and support to the management of marine protected areas. From this time, there were created 3 twinning projects or partnership projects, because normally twinning people think in 2, and we are talking about more than 2 partners. And these partnership projects were one about marine mammals protection, and this is the origin of the presentation you will have later today. Then we had another on coastal resilience, in which another group of marine protected areas across the Atlantic start working together and develop as well an equivalent tool to the one you will learn today, but for coastal resilience. And there was a third partnership that was between networks of marine protected areas managers. This was not technical, was more strategic, and allowed different networks to exchange on how they are providing permanent support to the managers at regional level. I'm going to just mention little about this because it was the first starting point of connection of the people that we work in the ocean governance with WIOMSA, so and later with WIOMPAN. So we start in, as I say, in 2016 with this, with just four regional networks: MEDPAN in the Mediterranean, RAMPAO in West Africa, CAMPAM in the Caribbean, and NAMPAM in North America. And we create a strategy about sharing information, knowledge, and tools, building capacity, policy support, and financing. Those were the 4 axes. And from this strategy, we have been working until now. These include, for instance, a new study for identifying what are the key factors for the network's effectiveness. So this allows to reinforce the partners, but also other networks that are not necessarily in our project. We also work a lot together in international events and processes, providing the voices of the managers in high-level debates. For instance, all the process for COP15, the new Global Biodiversity Framework. And we also work on tools for financing. So this is just an example, because here we contact for the first time with WIOMSA, and this was in 2017, as just an example. Today, just to mention, because I think it's relevant for you, we have WIOMPAN as one of the partners. So as you can see, our list of partners is more than 20 and is going beyond the Atlantic. And it includes also national agencies, because we think that the regional networks are very relevant to support the national action. So that's why we are working with this large approach. I will not go into the details because this will take a lot of time. Just to continue with the Ocean Governance Project, the component 1 I mentioned on restoring marine coastal ecosystems, it consists on 3 restoration projects, let's say pilot projects, Two of them targeting coral reefs in Tun Mustafa Park in Malaysia and in Derawan Marine Protected Area in Indonesia. This is around Borneo. And another project to restore mangroves in Balabac Island in the Philippines. The main element here is the involvement of the local and indigenous community in the whole process, from the selection of the place to be restored to the preparation of all the materials, collection of seeds, all the different steps. The community is there, and they also learn how to monitor and how to keep those ecosystems that have been restored in the future. So this is component one. And it is also interesting to say that those restoration activities are allowing to improve the management process in those MPAs. So we are very interested in connecting all the different actions to the governance level. And in this case, the governance is happening mainly at the level of the restoration sites. The second component is the one of the twinnings I already mentioned. And the third one is the exchanges between the Atlantic and the Southeast Asian partners. And we had so far 2 learning exchanges. The first one, because the pandemic, was virtual. And the second one took place last October in Kota Kinabalu and allowed to share the tools, for instance, the marine mammals tool, the restoration resilience tool, but also a lot of experiences to take care, for instance, of marine turtles, experiences on restoration, and also all the experience on networking and connecting all those different levels of action and governance. And the last component is the component 4 that promotes this regional cooperation in Southeast Asia. And for this component, we organized in November a first workshop with the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity about the CBD targets. At this time, there was not approved the new Global Biodiversity Framework, so we could not talk about Target 3 specifically, but we talk about the potential challenge to establish 30% by 2030, the importance of no-take zones, and the other effective area-basic conservation measures. So the idea was to allow the different people responsible in the governments to understand that there's a lot of possibilities to really reach this 20%. And now we are preparing a new workshop. The dates for this workshop were established yesterday, and it will be from 15th to 17 May in Manado, in Indonesia, and it's about the implementation of, by one side, the CBD Target 3, but also a specific resolution of the Convention on Migratory Species that promotes marine protected areas networks in the ASEAN region to protect migratory species. So we will be more targeting this dimension. And yeah, this is just some pictures of this workshop in the Philippines. And this is my last slide, just to resume what the Ocean Governance Project is doing, is to identify and provide good practices for governance of marine protected areas at different levels. At the local level, with the restoration of ecosystems, with in MPAs and with local stakeholders. Also at the management level of the MPAs, from also the local to the national dimensions, there's a lot of involvement, as you saw, of different agencies. And also this dimension of networking between managers. And then we pass to the regional dimensions of MPA management and regional networking and the international exchanges, either in the context of the project, with this example I told about Kota Kinabalu, or by participating in many different international events, such as the case of the CBD. And that's all, and thank you for your attention. If you have any question, I will be glad to respond. I'm going to close that. Okay.
Thank you very much, Puri, for that great presentation. And it was a great overview of the different components and twinnings of the Ocean Governance Project. I will now give the floor to Dr. Corinne Potin from the Western Indian Ocean Marine Protected Areas Professional Network, and also the director of La Réunion National Marine Reserve. Okay, I think we're experiencing some technical difficulties. We can just now continue with the presentation, and we can hear from one of our main speakers for the main part of the webinar, which will give a we'll hear from Dr. Nina Wambiji, who is from the Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute and the Wyomza Country Coordinator for Kenya, and she will give a presentation on the importance of marine mammals in the Western Indian Ocean. So, Dr. Nina Wambiji, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, Anna. Okay, then let me share from my slide. You can share my slides because I cannot share from this end.
I think you can now.
Okay. Let's see. Oops. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about the importance of marine mammals in the Western Indian Ocean region. I'm very happy to be in this webinar. So we have very different reasons why the marine mammals are important in the Western Indian Ocean region. First of all, through the whale and dolphin tours, we create a lot of education and awareness. So many people get to understand about these mammals and their conservation needs. Basically, again, the next thing is tourism. Everybody wants to see a dolphin, wants to see a whale. And we've got the bottlenose dolphins, which are resident in Kenya. And we also have now migration patterns that we have been collecting information on where they migrate between July and September. So there's a lot of tourism that is associated with the marine mammals. Something else that marine mammals are good for us is that they provide an alternative livelihood. All these whale and dolphin tours need boats, they need repairs, they need restaurants, they need tour guides, they need hotels. So it is one action that has many other feeder things that are associated with it. And of course, this then creates jobs locally and internationally, and it boosts the economy. The marine mammals are also known to have very different roles ecologically. They help in the primary productivity, which also is linked to fisheries resources. And last but not least, it's the biodiversity. Just by having them, we can say we have unique species, we have threatened species. So just the uniqueness of them occurring in our waters is something to be cognizant of. There are many efforts that have been done so far. Dr. Tudor has talked about efforts along the WEO region that need to be concretized. People need to work together. But we have efforts that have been made by the International Whaling Commission. We have a Swedish team that has worked out of Tanzania for more than 20 years now, together with the Institute of Marine Sciences. I was privileged once when I was a young scientist. I lived in Zanzibar for 1 or 2 months just looking at dolphins every day out in the sea. We've got projects in Madagascar. Mozambique is major with the Marine Megafauna Foundation, and a lot of research on marine mammals is done by South African teams. This list is not exhaustive, but these are some of the universities that have worked or are continuing to work on marine mammals. And last but not least, of course, in Kenya, when you come down home, it's the Kenya Marine Mammal Network. We work through a WhatsApp group, a very interesting WhatsApp group. We communicate a lot on that group. So we have 37 important marine mammal areas identified in the WEO region. And something else that I need to inform you is that the WEO region is it's a sanctuary, it's a whaling sanctuary, and this was determined by IWC, which means that there is no commercial dwelling that is supposed to occur in this area. And this is the second of the sanctuaries. One is in the Antarctic waters, Antarctica. So it's very interesting. It's unique to have these sanctuaries around. So to that effect, marine mammal areas have been identified, and the orange color are those that have been identified within this region. The ones, the red colors are candidates, important marine mammal areas, which means there's still some research or discussions about them. The colors in blue are the areas of interest. It means that there is something that we need to be to look at, and that's like Somalia, the Red Sea, and somewhere below the Maldives. And the criteria for determining marine mammal areas is species. What species are caught in these areas or are seen in these areas? What is the distribution? Is it temporal? Are they seen at particular times of the month? Are they seen yearly? Are they seen in a particular spot? What are the life cycles? Are these areas breeding areas, feeding areas? And that is what we know of the whales that migrate to the Wio region to reproduce while the waters are warm, and then they go back to the temperate regions. And lastly, the species attributes. What is distinct about these areas? So there's discussion on determining where these areas are, and many more areas are being identified. We have 33 species, marine mammals, that had been identified by the group from Sweden, led by Per Berggren. And of these, 26 are found in Kenya. So I'll use Kenya as a case study because we have the information at hand. And of the 26, we also see, looking at the IUCN status, some are endangered, some are least concerned, some are critically endangered. Case in point is the dugong, which is critically endangered. We've got the humpback dolphin, which is endangered. So we have to understand where these species are and what is it that you can do to contribute to them not being endangered. And for the species that we have no data, for example, the killer whales, why is it that we don't have data? What is it that you can do to get this data so that we get to protect and conserve these species? So Per and group wrote this book that can be found in the WAMSA store, so you can get a copy and see what species we have in this region. There are very many methods of data collection, and because marine mammals are out in the sea, it is not cheap, it is expensive, it needs a dedicated time. So we've got marine users, and marine users is anybody. It could be you, it could be me. If you're out in the sea or whereabouts around the seashores and you see a marine mammal, then you report it. You take a photograph. We've got dedicated surveys. Some are through studies. We've got a PhD that came out of Kenya. Zanzibar also has many students have produced, have worked in this area. So that's where the dedicated surveys come in from. And then you've got marine mammal observers. They could be land-based, they could be offshore. If it's land-based, we have a team, Watamu Marine Association, that has points where they sit and look out in the sea and record what they see. Marine mammal observers, vessels, fishing vessels, or vessels looking at oil and gas surveys, have or should have a dedicated marine mammals observer who takes this information, and then this is collected and we get to see what is happening out there. We have looked at the distribution of these marine mammals in the Kenyan coast. The first graph A, is about the bottlenose dolphins, and the lower one, B, is the humpback dolphins, and the third one is just small cetaceans. And you find by mapping this, looking at data from the marine users or dedicated surveys, for example, in Kenya, Malindi and Malindi, Watamu, and Shimoni areas are the areas that have resident dolphins. And this then helps in the tourism or in the education, because there is probability of you going to these areas and seeing dolphins in a day. So that helps us in management of this species. It helps to create a tourism circuit. It helps to, dedicate time to these areas. We also have aerial surveys that have been conducted. The first aerial survey on marine mammals was conducted in 1994, carried by Kenya Wildlife Service, and they really saw interesting things all the way from sharks, whales, turtles, dolphins, and recorded this information. 3 weeks ago, another dedicated survey was conducted again with Kenya Wildlife Service, the Wildlife Research and Training Institute, and IFO. And this one was expansive because it surveyed all the way from Somalia, Kenya, and Tanzania. So we're watching this space to see what they found, but I believe it's going to be very, very interesting results. So that's the easiest way to understand or to see our marine mammals, to look at them from, from the top. We have also records of strandings. Strandings, it's a sad thing to see a stranding, but again, it's a good thing. You get to see what species are coming out. What is being stranded. Then they give science a question: why were they stranded? Why here? Was it? What is the reason? So I can look at this picture of the young girl. She's holding her waist and asking herself, what is this? What could have caused it to be here? So strandings help us collect data of the species that we may not necessarily have known were in our waters, but are slowly coming out. Kenya had, for the longest time, thought that dugongs were extinct. And in 2017, there was a stranding, and that gave hope that the species are still within the waters. And recently, we've also been seeing them, or strandings in Lamu area. So it helps us to see what we have out there. So we do have this network of strandings, and when a species like this is caught, we go out to the sea and to the shore and try to get some measurements, try to get some samples just for extra science. The way forward in marine mammal work in the Western Indian Ocean region is to implement the recommendations of the International Whaling Commission. There is a bycatch mitigation initiative whereby we have to see, are we catching any of these marine mammals in our fishing gears? And what are the protocols of if you catch something, how can you release it? How can that be done, in a safe way, so that the animal may not lose its life, nor the fisherman. We also have to establish the movements of these animals. We are in that process now. We now know when the humpback dolphins are migrating up and down, but we need to know what about these other species. We need to understand the habitats. Why is it that the dolphins are living in Shimoni and in Watamu area? What is it about, what's special about these areas? And how can we then rehabilitate other areas that could be potential areas for this species? What are the threats to the populations? Is it the noise from the fishing vessels? Is it plastics? Is it whatever it is it pollution? What is it that could be threats? We also need to work across countries because these are migratory species we have seen. So we need to work with the regional fisheries organizations, IOTC, and other countries. What is it? To see what we can do to them. We need to map this species. Where are they occurring? There's a lot of work that is being done on marine spatial planning across many Western Indian Ocean countries. So we need to have an understanding of where the species are. And last but not least, we need to support any existing or potential research efforts. A case in point is the Kenya Marine Mammal Network, and of course, all the others of the efforts that I have mentioned in the second slide. And this calls upon all of us, you, me, you're out in the sea and you see something, you see a blow of some air, you document it, you take a picture, you ask questions, and this way we'll have more information on the marine mammals. I want to acknowledge I could not have done this without information and collaboration from the Watamu Marine Association, specifically Michael Mangombe. Then WAMSA funded two mega projects, the BICAM project that looked at bycatch of whales, dolphins, sharks, rays, and turtles in gillnets and longlines across the Wio region. We also had the Dugong project, and we have Dr. Asma Awad, who did a PhD on dolphins, on dugongs, and that's very important information that we now have. Kenya Wildlife Service for the aerial surveys and for being on the ground with the wardens, with the officers, with the cadets, looking at marine mammals on a day-to-day scale, the IWC, and of course the IUCN. So we cannot also do any of this work without the citizen scientists, the fishers, and the communities that live around the marine mammals. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you very much, Nida Wambiji. That was an excellent presentation, and it was great to learn more about all the different initiatives on marine mammal research and conservation happening in the Western Indian Ocean and specifically in Kenya. I will now start the first of the two presentations on the Marine Mammals Management Toolkit. Okay. Thank you for that patience and for the apologies for the technical difficulties. So for anyone that joined later, my name is Anna Safrigin, and I'm the focal point for the Marine Mammal Twinning and the Marine Mammals Management Toolkit. As Puri Kanal mentioned during her presentation, the Marine Mammals Management Toolkit was developed by the Marine Mammal Twinning as part of the EU Ocean Governance Project. It has four main objectives. The first one is to build technical capacities of MPA managers by sharing knowledge, expertise, and good practice. 2, to provide MPA managers with a toolbox to improve the management of marine mammals. 3 is to create a network of users, which is the community of practice, and peers that could provide assistance to other MPA managers on an ad hoc basis. And 4 is to adapt the toolbox to other migratory species, such as turtles or other significant species in other regions. And you can learn more about the Marine Mammal Twinning and the Marine Mammals Management Toolkit by scanning the QR code on the screen. So the Marine Mammal Management Toolkit was developed in partnership and collaborations with multiple organizations. The twinning benefits from 11 core partners, which are MPAs, national entities, as well as other organizations. And we also benefit from the constant support and collaborations from other organizations such as the International Whaling Commission, the Whale and Dolphin Conservation, and as Nina mentioned in her presentation, we also work with the Marine Mammal Protected Area Task Force and the IMAS process in an effort to see if to use the toolkit to support the process of the IMA designations. So the Marine Mammals Management Toolkit was designed and is the only toolkit specifically for marine mammals and MPAs, because while we know, and Nina explained in her presentation as well, that marine mammals are incredibly important for the ecosystem, they're not well represented in the main MPA management effectiveness tools. So the Marine Mammals Management Toolkit was developed following this lack of representation. It is an online resource and it is available by visiting the website down below, www.marine-mammals.info, with all the resources available straight from the main homepage. It is composed of 5 key components. We have, first of all, fact sheets, which provide information on specific aspects related to marine mammals and MPAs. The self-assessment tool, including the reduced version, the SAT Lite. We also have created recently the community of practice to bring together all toolkit users and marine mammal practitioners. Good practices to showcase successful conservation initiatives, case studies, and management actions. And finally, we also have a newsletter and events where we provide updates on marine mammal research, upcoming events, webinars, etc. And it's really important to note that all the components of the toolkit have been designed to be interlinked, supportive, and complement each other to allow a holistic approach to the toolkit. So now I will go into a little bit more detail about specific aspects of the toolkit. So the first of all is fact sheets. These are, they provide information on suggestions, management actions on specific topics related to marine mammals and MPA management. So they, for example, we have a fact sheet on, one of the fact sheet tackles the threat of marine mammal bycatch and entanglement. We also have fact sheets on data collection in respect to marine mammals, MPA evaluation, and community engagement and capacity building as well. So currently we have 24 fact sheets, and we are working on developing 2 more fact sheets. They are designed to accompany the self-assessment tool, and they work hand in hand with the self-assessment tool. They are divided across 5 core themes. So management framework, addressing activities and threats, research and monitoring, outreach and engagement, and management effectiveness. These fact sheets are continually evolving and updated and strengthened, depending on the latest advances in marine mammal research and conservation and management. They are available on our website and they're incredibly user-friendly. They're all divided and displayed according to the theme, and users can click on different fact sheets and find the information that they're looking for. So the next one is the self-assessment tool. I will briefly speak about the self-assessment tool, as we'll hear from Tom Dallas in the next presentation, a more detailed account of the self-assessment tool. So the self-assessment tool is the original core component of the toolkit, and it has been designed to build the capacity of MPA managers to understand the level of protection that marine mammals have in specific MPAs and MPA management plans, but also to empower them to take action to make sure that the level of protection is adequate and to fill any gaps or weaknesses within their management plans. So the performance of the self-assessment tool, it works through a series of questions, and the performance is assessed against 5 core themes of the fact sheet. So it relates back to the fact sheet, and users can then use the information of the fact sheets to make sure that they are interpreting the results and acting on the management actions in the right way. And it's been designed to be incredibly accessible. So it has an online and offline version, and with both versions being accessible in French, Spanish, and English. And finally, we have recently developed a reduced version of the self-assessment tool called Satellite. So this is a map of the use of the self-assessment tool so far. It has been used across 17 MPAs. And as you can see, it has been heavily used in the Americas region. And this is expected, as is the original scope of the project, as Thierry Canals mentioned in her presentation, was the Atlantic Basin. But we're now expanding to other regions, and as well as in the Western Indian Ocean, for example. Through the use of the self-assessment tool, we were able to find that the threats mitigation, the early implementation of measures, and regular updates of management plan will lead to more effective MPAs for marine mammal conservation. So the another component of the toolkit is the community of practice, and it provides a forum to discuss ideas, problems, issues, and create invaluable networking opportunities for the effective management of marine mammals with and around MPAs. This was created to bring MPA managers, practitioners, and all stakeholders together that use the toolkit, so they're able to share information, exchange knowledge, as well as receive mentorship from experienced users of the self-assessment tool and of the toolkit. Anyone can join the community of practice, and once they join, they're able to add their logo, which is represented here, on their communication material, as well as having an online presence of the toolkit. And the map displays here the current members of the community of practice. To facilitate all the communication of the community of practice and the knowledge exchange happening between members, we have also created a community of practice mailing group. You can access the mailing group by scanning the QR code at the top, or by copying and pasting and inserting that address into the search bar. So the mailing group is the key vessel to facilitate exchanges between the community of practice members. Members can interact with other members through direct messages or by posting a global message to all members, where they can share knowledge, expertise, good practices, and have any questions answered as well from other members, as well as receive support from the marine mammal twinning on the application of the toolkit. And finally, the mailing group is also a forum and a platform to stay up to date with the development and updates of the toolkit, as well as from updates from the marine mammal and MPA world, as we frequently post news, events, and upcoming webinars relevant to marine mammals and MPAs. So, as I've mentioned, the components of the toolkit have been designed to be interlinked and strengthen each other and complement each other, making the Marine Mammals Management Toolkit a tool for multiple purposes. It can be used for monitoring the progress of MPAs throughout the entire life cycle of an MPA, from establishment all the way to monitoring and evaluation. It can be used as a checklist for developing an MPA management plan. For example, if you have an MPA but don't have an MPA plan in place, you can use the toolkit to understand the current threats faced by mammals in the area. It supports adaptive management because it can be used multiple times, and it can be used to understand weaknesses and then act to perhaps amend the management plan. And finally, it is also a very important capacity building tool. We have multiple resources available through the toolkit, fact sheets through the different components. And it can also be used as a communication tool. So as Tom will mention in a later presentation, the self-assessment tool results, as well as all other resources of the toolkit, have been designed in a very user-friendly as well as aesthetical way to be able to be used as a communication tool to show the progress of MPAs through to different stakeholders, funders, as well as the general public. So the Marine Mammals Management Toolkit is really easily available online, and with all four components being able to be accessed from the home page, so everything is very reachable and easily accessible. So how can you be involved in the toolkit? So as I've mentioned in the previous slides, we are always looking to expand the use of the toolkit and the self-assessment tool. So if you need any information or help or support with the toolkit, we are able to do that both via email as well as setting up a Zoom call. Please review the toolkit, as we always trying to strengthen and update the toolkit. So please review the toolkit and good practices, as well as, most importantly, the fact sheets. If you have conservation measures or conservation actions or case studies, please submit a good practice, and we can always aid you and help with that. And finally, join the community of practice and the mailing group. There will be another QR code later in the presentation for that as well. So in terms of next steps, this will be my last slide before I hand it to the next presentation. So the next steps for the Marine Mammals Management Toolkit, we are focusing on training and capacity building. We are seeking collaborations with MPA managers to use the toolkit, and we're developing training resources, including an online tutorial. We are developing new further fact sheets. We're working on 2 more fact sheets, which is one of the socio-economical impacts of marine mammals, as well as the effects of marine debris to marine mammals and the implication to MPA management. We also obviously trying to increase the uptake of the toolkit, not just the self-assessment tool, but also the toolkit itself, as well as expanding the marine mammal management community of practice. So with that, that is the end of my presentation, and I will give the floor to Tom Dallison, who will give us a detailed overview as well as a guide us through the use of the toolkit, the self-assessment tool, and Satellite.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Anna, and good morning, good afternoon to those of you on the call, to some of the partners that are on the call, Ben and Lena, Ben and Sarah, and especially for the early morning. And so thank you for joining us. Just checking you can see my presentation correctly, Anna. All good? Okay. Perfect. So as Anna mentioned, my name's Tom Dallison, and I work alongside Anna and Francis Staub. And for the next 15 minutes, I'm going to give you a quick tour of the self-assessment tool, one of the sort of core components of the Marine Mammals Management Toolkit, as Anna has already mentioned. So I know we've gone through this already, but just very quickly, the self-assessment tool was really designed to enable MPA managers to understand the level to which marine mammals were considered in MPA management plans. And whilst we recognise that marine mammals are represented in other tools, we found that these weren't sort of the core focus of the tool, and there was a lot of gaps left or gaps not addressed. So we really designed this tool to allow MPA managers to improve the level of conservation for marine mammals. The self-assessment tool itself is available offline and also online. So offline, especially if you need to go out to the field and interviews and communicate with stakeholders, you don't need internet access, so you can carry it with you on your or your iPad and continue to update it. And we also have the online version, which is a bit more functional, but of course you need internet access for that. So I'll provide further detail, but to make it really simple, the self-assessment tool is a set of guided multiple choice questions, and we have around about 100 to 120 questions in the full scale self-assessment tool, and each one of your answers is awarded a value. And then as you move through the self-assessment tool, a dashboard is produced which adds up all those values in relation to your answers and provides a review of your marine protected area, identifying strengths and also identifying weaknesses, to allow adaptive management or to allow for adjustments in management practices. The dashboard provides quick snapshot of the effectiveness, if you will, of the MPA for marine mammals, but it really comes into its own and shows its value when it's used on that temporal scale. And to increase accessibility, we've translated the self-assessment tool into French, Spanish, and English as well. So as I've mentioned, it promotes adaptive management. It's really, really valuable for temporal monitoring, looking at that sort of management and evaluation cycle of an MPA, and not only for the benefit of marine protected area managers and users, but it's also really valuable capacity building and awareness raising, especially when discussing with general users, but also policymakers and maybe funding bodies and collaborating partners as well. So whilst it is intrinsically for an assessment tool, it's also a very valuable capacity building tool. So as Anna mentioned, the self-assessment tool is within the toolkit, which is available online, and I've put a red square around the top menu where you can find it. You can click directly on self-assessment tool, or you can go directly to the website. So if we click directly on the self-assessment tool, this is the page that you're met with. It provides you with a very quick introduction to the self-assessment tool and some key considerations. But most importantly, at the bottom, you'll see the options and these are the direct download files for the self-assessment tool. And this is specifically for the Excel version. So as you can see, you have the English, French, and Spanish versions, and there is also a tab that allows you to move through to the web-based version as well. So if you want to do the Excel version, you can directly download it here. Or if you would prefer to use the online version, you can click on Visit Website, and you're met with a similar page, again, providing an introduction and how the website is used. Currently, we're developing some guidance material for the self-assessment tool. We're producing a series of videos which will guide you through the use of the self-assessment tool and the toolkit at large. And we're also producing some documentation to really sort of act as a walkthrough to the self-assessment tool. And if there's any points in where you're stuck or you facilitation, then you can refer to the guidance, or of course we're always available to help and jump on a call if needed if you have specific questions. Okay, so let's use the Excel version as an example. So the first thing you need to do is to download the file. That will then move to your download file, and again you can download it in English, French or Spanish, and you'll notice the format of the file is an XLSN. And that is because the self-assessment tool includes macros. So once you open the self-assessment tool, it will ask you if you want to enable or disable macros. At this stage, always accept to enable macros because it will allow the function of the self-assessment tool. So once you're open, you'll be met with an introduction, which provides some key information on the self-assessment tool, but also importantly asks you to add your details into the self-assessment tool, such as name, your position, email, mobile number, and importantly, date as well. And this is really good assessing housekeeping, mainly because it's an Excel file. When you're undertaking the assessment, you may not have all the answers ready and available at hand. So the Excel version allows you to save that and pass it to other colleagues, but also pick it up at a later stage. So having the information on who is undertaking the assessment and when it was undertaking the assessment is critically important. So once you've inputted your information, you can then move to a contents page, and here you can see all the various sections of the self-assessment tool. Dashboard, MPA data. We then have those 5 core themes that Anna has already spoken about, and then we have some further information and resources available to assist with the process. So the first step of the self-assessment tool is really collecting the metadata or the sort of overarching data of the marine protected area. And again, this is super critical when we're undertaking assessments and in general collecting data, undertaking assessment, but not having the information on the MPA on which the assessment was undertaken isn't the most efficient use of everybody's time, which of course is very slim these days. So we ask for the country of the MPA. You can input your coordinates as well, which is super important. And it also asks you some further information, whether or not there's any IUCN categorization, the type of governance that's in place with respect to the MPA, and total surface area as well. And you can also start to input specific species, the main uses and around the MPA and the marine and the main perceived pressures. There are certain questions in the self-assessment tool that have prompts and information prompts to guide you. But if you need further information, there is also an answer guide on the column on the right-hand side. And there's some links as well to some specific definitions looking at the IUCN categories and the types of governance that are available. So whilst the self-assessment is for the assessor to complete, we have built resources and guidance throughout the self-assessment tool to help along the way. So once you've completed your metadata, then you will start to move into the self-assessment tool. So I've just taken a screenshot of an example of one of the sections, but there is a section for each one of those 5 core themes, and then each one of those themes is then broken down into individual sets of questions. So, for example, on the screen, we're looking at addressing activities and threats, and we're looking at whale and dolphin and Syringa watching as well. Important to note, and Nina, thank you for bringing this up as well, looking specifically at bycatch and stranding, they're also key topics that are integrated throughout the toolkit as well. So you have those fact sheets, but they're also questions specific to bycatch and stranding built into the self-assessment tool. So if we take this example, super simple, as I said, multiple choice guided questions. So you ask the question in the answer column, you then have a drop-down menu with your answers, and then you select the one that is most appropriate. We've integrated a not applicable answer, where if there is a question or a scenario that is asked that is not applicable to your protected area, you can select that and it will not affect your score towards the end. Previously, we didn't have this function, so where things weren't applicable, the MPA was downgraded and received the same score as saying no, which isn't the most representative way of doing it. So we've integrated this not applicable as well. So you work through each section, you have all these various questions, providing the most appropriate answer. And again, another example, not all the answers are yes or no, some are more specific. So here we're looking at, is there knowledge of ecological status of marine mammals within the MPA? There's a substantial amount, there's a moderate amount, or there's limited to no ecological knowledge. So some answers differ to questions, but again, they're all multiple choice when asking you to type text answers. So once you've worked through all the questions, you will come to a dashboard. But before I go to the dashboard, I mentioned before that there are some other resources built into the tool. So we have sort of a small collection, so to speak, of marine mammal species where we provide you with the sort of taxonomic nomenclature of the species, but we also provide the common names in French, English, and Spanish to really help with capacity building, sharing between agencies, and of course, marine mammals transboundary in nature in their behaviours. Times where organisations from different countries may need to collaborate and share information. So just trying to aid that process. And second, I also mentioned that there are definitions in help as well. So this is just a screenshot of the definitions page where we provide some further information on the IUCN categories. So the dashboard, the exciting bit. So once you've answered all your questions, the tool will produce a dashboard and it provides you with a breakdown across those 5 core groups. So as we can see here, in example, in management framework, we obtained a score of 33 out of a maximum score of 41. And you can see that throughout all those other 4 topics. We then provide you with a management effectiveness score. Really important to note that this score is arbitrary in its nature. We included it to provide a nice focus point to allow for easy understanding of the effectiveness based on the results of the self-assessment tool. And this score is specifically for the MPA. It's for the benefit of the MPA and for internal use. This score isn't intended at MPAs. You can also see on the screen some figures as well. So we've got a radar plot so you can start to visualize your results, and then a bar chart so you can assess the maximum attainable score against the score that you received. Further, the dashboard, it also provides some further information with regards to threats as well. So in some sections, we further break down those core groupings. Important use of this dashboard, whilst it's used great for internal use, it can also be saved as a PDF downloaded from the online web, inserted into reports as well, into monitoring and evaluation reports, into upcoming management plans, but also as a tool for communication as well, especially where you have funders and government agencies that have provided funding to support the MPA. You can use the results or multiple results of the assessment tool in this dashboard to really showcase the impact of funding and support. So it's got many useful advantages of using the dashboard. So whilst we said at the start that the self-assessment tool can really be used to provide a snapshot, but it really starts to show its value as you move through that sort of or multiple assessment protocol. So I threw together this quick infographic just to try and showcase that. So, and Anna mentioned it before as well, that you don't have to have an active MPA management plan to undertake the self-assessment tool. Although it wasn't the initial intention of developing this tool, we've received lots of communication and stories from MPA managers, colleagues that are in the process of establishing an MPA. So they've used the tool, the self-assessment tool, to identify specific questions and topics they should be they should be considering in their management plan. And secondly, to assess the draft version of that management plan. So before it goes through the official process of being established, you can use the toolkit to assess the management plan so you can make those changes to increase its effectiveness for marine mammals prior to being established. So you know from year zero from establishment, the MPA, the management plan is in a very good position for marine mammals. So that's step one. You can then move into step two, where once you have your MPA established, you can then do your first initial assessment. So in year zero, and as we can see in the infographic, the first assessment may be a 3.4, and you can see across those 5 core themes that the scores are relatively low. You can then implement another assessment defined by the management plan. It may be every 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. It's written into the management plan. But here we take 3 years, and we can see that from learning from the results of year zero and possible changes that we've made through adaptive management, our score is increased 0.1, and we can see an increase across 5 core themes. And again, learning from those results, maybe in year 6, we implement some further changes, we can see the effectiveness continues to increase. So whilst, yes, it's good for a snapshot, when you start to put things in motion and sort of through that monitoring and evaluation cycle, you can really start to see hopefully some improvements, but it also directs you to use, in most cases, limited resources in the most valuable areas. And you'll notice very quickly, to go on to it, that on the infographic, I've also included called the SAT, which can be used at intermediate times between the full assessments to provide a bit more detail on how the management plan is progressing. But we'll go on to the satellite now. So I mentioned previously that the full self-assessment tool is approximately 100 to 120 questions. We recommend that it would take between an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on if you have the information available. However, in most cases where that information is available, there may be more time required. But we recognize that not everybody has the time to sit down for 2 hours every year or every 6 months to redo an assessment. And especially if it isn't aligned with the time frame of the MPA management plan, there may be very limited the changes in results that are seen between a quick succession of assessments. So to reduce the requirement of time and limited resources, we developed a light version of the self-assessment tool. It acts in exactly the same manner self-assessment tool, but it has a significantly reduced number of questions. So we're probably looking at about 30 questions for the light version of this assessment tool. Operates the same way, covers those 5 core themes, and also it produces a dashboard again, which can be used for sharing. We're still currently testing it at the moment. It's in its final stages of testing. We hope to have it available on the website very shortly. But if you did want to use it, you're more than welcome to send us an email, and we can have a discussion and walk you through how it works. So as an example, again, similar to the full assessment, you have guided questions and you have multiple choice. Because of the size of the light version and because of its aims and objectives, we're able to add a little bit more functionality into the satellite. So here you can see we're asking for pressures and perceived pressures in, for example, in this MPA as an example, noise was high, entanglement was medium, stranding medium, bycatch relatively low. And then you can work through all these different sections. Once you've answered the questions in the satellite, you're presented with a dashboard using similar sort of features. So we provide you with the radar plot, but you'll notice that the management effectiveness score has been replaced. So we've replaced the effectiveness score with a prompt to whether or not we believe, based on the results of satellite, that you should go and undertake a full self-assessment. So based on your scores, the colors, etc., on the dashboard will change. And most importantly, the box below, should I complete the full self-assessment tool, will change depending on your score. So we may recommend that based on your current score, that we really recommend that you go and take a full assessment. We may recommend that you should possibly think about undertaking one, but maybe first look at the different fact sheets and the resources available on your across the various threats. Or we may say, your score is relatively good. You can undertake a full assessment if you would like, but for now, we think everything's okay. But we may then still push you to some fact sheets depending on some of the threats that you scored relatively low. So the satellite can be used intermediary between full self-assessments, but also if you're unsure on whether you need to take a full assessment, you can undertake a satellite, which will then advise you if we think you should, or if you wait a little bit longer when you possibly have some more resources. And I appreciate I'm throwing lots of information and lots of different tools at you, but on the toolkit we also have this handy workflow. I was about to say simple workflow, but I don't think it is super simple. But on the left-hand side, you have questions. We've included questions that you may be asking, and then you can follow the lines, and it will prompt you to the various different sections of the toolkit, including the self-assessment tool and including the satellite, based on your responses to the questions. So I appreciate I'm coming close and maybe slightly over, so sorry, Anna. But I want to finish on this point, and I appreciate there are lots of tools available. When we start talking about assessments, we start talking about 100 to 120 questions, it can be quite daunting. However, I want to reaffirm that we, as the Marine Mammal Twinning team, are available to help you. We appreciate situations in different locations vary. So you may have specific questions for specific species or specific approaches within or around your marine protected area. We're more than happy to host any tailored sessions, or we can answer specific questions either via Zoom or via email. Please do just reach out to us. The email is there on the screen, and just a reminder of the URL as well as toolkit. So any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch, and we look forward to working with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tom, for that presentation. And it was really good to see how the self-assessment tool works step by step. So now I will introduce our next and final speaker, who is Ben Haskell from the Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, who will give a presentation on the use of the toolkit on the Stellwagen Bank Sanctuary.
Okay, can you hear me okay, Anna?
Yes, I can hear you. I'll just share your presentation right now.
Great, thank you. Well, good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Based here right now anyway, in my home in Boston. And I wanted to thank the Ocean Governance Initiative for giving me this opportunity to present to you today. Again, my name is Ben Haskell. I'm the Deputy Superintendent of Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary, which is located here off Boston, Massachusetts, in Massachusetts Bay. Today, I'd like to briefly introduce you to the sanctuary and explain how we've used the Marine Mammals Toolkit to aid our management plan process. The sanctuary is located off the coast of Mass and is one of 15 marine protected areas that make up the National Marine Sanctuary System, which you can see in that small inset on the map. The system is part of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, otherwise known as NOAA. The United States Congress dedicated the sanctuary 30 years ago in 1992. The sanctuary is 2,190 square kilometers of open ocean waters, but is easily accessible from many ports around Massachusetts Bay. Our mission is to conserve, protect, and enhance the biological diversity, ecosystem services, and cultural legacy of the sanctuary. Next slide, please, Anna. The U.S. Congress designated the Stellwagen Bank Sanctuary because it's an area of high biodiversity. For example, we have 22 species of marine mammals and 55 species of seabirds, and untold number of other invertebrates. But they also designated because it's an important fishing ground and has been for over 400 years. Congress recognized that the sanctuary's many uses can have negative effects on the long-term health of the ecosystem, and empowered NOAA to manage and protect the sanctuary for the long-term enjoyment and benefit of the people of the United States. Some of the many uses of the sanctuary are commercial and recreational fishing, shipping, whale watching, research, and sailing, some of which are shown here in the slide. Next slide, please. We have recently finished our third revision of the management plan, which is something we do approximately every 10 years. The final management plan will be published online in the next month or so. The plan will guide the site's programming for the next 5 to 10 years and serves to inform the public and the sanctuary constituents on our activities to protect the ecosystem and the sanctuary resources. Action plans are how NOAA organizes management issues. Each action plan has goals and strategies to address those goals. And here you see listed are the 15 action plans supported by 76 strategies and hundreds of activities, many of which are focused on marine mammal protection and research. Some of our priorities related to marine mammal protection are to reduce entanglements and in fishing gear and strike by vessels, large and small vessels, and to promote ropeless, or some call it buoyless, fishing gear, and to understand the value of ecosystem services provided by marine mammals, such as nutrient cycling. Next slide, please. So, as was stated earlier, the toolkit has 4 components, one of which is the self-assessment tool. And several years ago, I helped the ocean governance team create the self-assessment tool and contributed some best management practices based on our experience here at Stellwagen Bank Sanctuary. And you can find some of those best management practices on the ocean governance website, or the Marine Mammals Twinning website. So whether you are just beginning the process of considering whether to develop a marine mammal management plan, or if you are in the process of evaluating and revising your management plan, the toolkit can help get you started and help you focus on the most important aspects of marine mammals management. I find the self-assessment tool to be very comprehensive and thought-provoking. I think the best approach, if I were to do this, it would be to first read through the fact sheets and get some context for going through the self-assessment tool, and then to take the to run through the tool itself. Don't think of it as a test, because it's not really a test. It's just a means to help you evaluate what topics you should be thinking about in your management plan, and to start thinking about where to focus your limited resources. I recently completed the SAT just a few days ago to evaluate how well we address the issues related to marine mammals management. And you can see on the screen what score I ended up with, which I'm happy. I'm happy with that score of 7.8, and was not surprised that we scored lower in the two areas of addressing activities and threats, and also outreach and engagement. The next slide provides a bit more detail of how we scored for each of the 6 threats listed in the self-assessment tool. I don't have time to go into great detail about each or our lower scores in the 2 threat areas, but they are whale watching and the bycatch of marine mammals. The low score for whale watching is likely because we have no regulations on the conduct of whale watching currently. All we have are voluntary guidelines. And our research has showed that voluntary guidelines have limited effectiveness, and regulations would be more effective, in my opinion. The reason for the low score in bycatch is because of all the fishing that occurs in the sanctuary, and some of that fishing uses gear that can entangle whales, namely lobster trap fishing and crab trap fishing currently use vertical lines from the trap up to the surface where there's a buoy, and the whales, as they forage for food, can easily get entangled in those vertical lines. I agree with the results of the self-assessment tool that we could be doing more to be making whale watching safer, namely through the use of regulations. And in terms of bycatch and entanglement of whales, we are contributing right now to the transition to ropeless or buoyless gear to get the vertical ropes out of the water column and reduce the risk of entanglement. So in summary, I think the toolkit is an extremely useful resource, and I highly recommend that you use the toolkit, and also including the self-assessment tool to help focus your activities or management planning activities. So at this point, Anna, if there's time, I have 2 more slides to talk about building capacity. Shall I go through those in the next 2 minutes or so?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I wanted to just finish up talking about how we build capacity to protect marine mammals. And in this busy slide, you see some of the technologies that we've been using over the last 20 years or so to understand marine mammal distribution and abundance, and to use those results to translate into management policy to protect marine mammals. So our scientists at the sanctuary run the longest running whale tagging program in the world to better understand the behaviors of baleen whales, and to help protect them from hazards like shipping and entanglement. And so these 2 images on the slide in the upper left corner show the tag, digital tag going on the back of a humpback whale. And then the track of that whale underwater over approximately, an 18-hour period, showing how the whale obviously would go to the bottom and forage for a small forage fish we have here, and then obviously come up and breathe. Our folks work with other scientists on the Atlantic large whale take reduction team to reduce injuries and deaths of large whales due to incidental entanglement in fishing gear. So there are these active groups that meet regularly to improve policies and regulations to protect whales. Another major partnership-based effort is the work we've done to help lower the risk of fatal ship strikes on endangered whales. Our sanctuary staff use data, for example, automatic identification system data, to understand not only where the ships are, and then another data set to understand the distribution of whales. And that enabled us to shift the Boston shipping lane into an area of less risk for ship strike of whales. To help mariners better understand where whales are, we also pioneered the development of the smartphone app Whale Alert, which uses data from acoustic buoys to notify mariners when endangered right whales are in the area so they can slow down. You can see an image of that app in the middle of the screen, and it's free, and is used in other parts of the world beyond just here in Massachusetts. I don't think it's, at least I don't think it's being used in the Indian Ocean yet, but it certainly could. Our staff also uses data from automatic identification system to track compliance with mandatory speed management areas or slow speed zones for protecting right whales. We have used passive acoustics for over 15 years to understand the impacts of noise from shipping activities on whale behavior. The image on the right side of the screen shows an example of a passive acoustic monitoring mooring that we use to listen for calling right whales, which are highly endangered. And if the whales are detected, transiting ships must slow to 10 knots in the area around the mooring where the whale was detected. And the last slide, Anna, if you could, provide some examples of how we're using science and technology to inform management and policy for protecting marine mammals. So sort of moving from left to right across the slide, this image shows, again, how we shifted the shipping lane into Boston based on the distribution of humpbacks and right whales. The images at the top of the slide are from our corporate responsibility program, which uses the power of positive reinforcement to acknowledge vessels that are compliant with slow speed zones. So rather than using top-down regulatory approach, this is more of a sort of a softer approach, non-regulatory, sort of using peer pressure, if you will, by sending out these report cards essentially to all of the vessels and companies that that utilize or transit through the sanctuary, and if they are if they're doing well and in complying, we actually send them a grade of A or A+, and we also tell the companies in that package that we sent them how much time it would take them to be compliant with the slow speed zones. And oftentimes it's just a matter of minutes for them to be more compliant or fully compliant. And so that's information they can use to modify their behavior and do a better job. In the middle of the slide is a map showing the migratory pathways of the humpback whale in North Atlantic. And this knowledge of humpback distribution is gained either through identification of individual whales by photographing their unique patterns on the underside of their flukes, or by satellite tagging of the whales to see where they go from the breeding grounds in the Caribbean up to the feeding grounds in the north. And on the far right is another example of a corporate responsibility program called Whale Sense, which is designed to ensure that whale watch operators are operating responsibly and safely around whales. So I just wanted to give you some examples of the science and technology that we use to inform management and policy. So I will stop there, and if there's time for questions, I'm happy to answer any. Otherwise, I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Ben, for the presentation, and thank you for getting up quite early, because I understand that the time difference makes it quite super early for you. Yes, we do have a little bit of time left for questions. So if you have any questions, please just raise your hand and we'll invite you to open your microphone, and you can ask your question directly to one of our speakers, or you can also type your question in the chat and we will revert it back to the speaker. Yes, you can unmute, and Violaine Dulau, you can very welcome to address your question.
Yes, good morning, everyone, or good evening. So I'm Violaine Dulau. I'm working in the region, in Reunion Island, so in the southwestern Indian Ocean, and so we're doing some research on marine mammals in Reunion, but also in the more general area. And I'm also leading the INDOSET network. So it's a network of researchers that are working in the region. So I think it would, well, thanks for this presentation. I think it was very useful to, get to know more about this toolkit. And I think it would be very nice if we could collaborate or exchange more. I can see like some mutual benefit in this collaboration. We could maybe like promote the toolkit on our website. And I just wanted to draw your attention that this network exists in the region, and to add to the presentation of Nina, which was very, very good.
Yes, thank you very much for that question, for raising our attention to the network. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I think we can definitely continue this conversation on working together with the toolkit, promoting as both networks and etc.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
We have a little bit more time for a few more questions. So raise your hand and we'll give you the floor. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to know if we could know who was attending this webinar, because we can't see the list of participants. So I think it would be quite useful to know who was attending and who was not, and just as a matter of curiosity as well, but just to, to see if maybe there are members of the INDOSET network that are attending the webinar that we could follow up the discussion with.
Yes, of course. We will follow up with this webinar and we can share the list of registered participants so we can see who was attending and see if we can widen the network as well.
Okay, great. Thanks.
I think we have time for one more question. If anyone would like to take the floor, and then I'll give some concluding remarks. Okay, I'll just share my screen really quickly, just as a final slide. I just wanted to thank you all participants for joining, as well as our speakers and the co-host of this webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. These are just some contact information for the Marine Mammal Management Toolkit team, as well as the URL and the newsletter. And as always, the QR code to join the community of practice. Before we go, I would like, we thought it would be a good idea if everyone could turn their cameras off so we can take a quick photo of all attendees for our communication of this webinar. Okay, I think we have some technical malfunctions, but thank you for those who
we can't.
Opened up the camera.
Yeah, and neither the discussion. I can't type into the discussion the chatting box.
Oh, I'm not sure.
So I will reply by email, but I just wanted to type into the chat box.
Okay, yes, sure. Please send us an email and we can continue the conversation. Collaboration. But just thank you again to all our speakers who woke up earlier and allowing for the different time zones, and for our co-hosts, so the Wyompan and Wyomza, and thank you for everyone to join.
Thank you.
Perfect. And now we can...
Thank you so much.
Recording stopped.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Stay in touch by email.
Yep.